In the heart of Seattle, where the Puget Sound glimmered under overcast skies, Lily Carter had spent 5 years in a sterile hospital room tending to James Mitchell, a tech mogul whose name once dominated Silicon Valley headlines. The beeping monitors and antiseptic air had become her world since 2020, when James, then 32, suffered a heart attack that plunged him into a coma. Lily, a former model with a gentle smile and eyes that held quiet strength, had poured her soul into his care. She bathed him, read him poetry, and whispered memories of their shared past, believing her love could coax him back to life. Every night she prayed for a miracle, her fingers tracing the worn pages of a journal where she wrote letters to him, hoping he'd hear her in some distant corner of his mind. Lily's devotion wasn't just duty, it was love born from a moment years ago when James had saved her from ruin. In 2018, during a high-profile fashion show at Seattle's Paramount Theater, Lily's heel caught in a stage crack, sending her crashing to the runway. Her ankle twisted grotesquely, and the crowd's gasps echoed in her ears. Organizers threatened lawsuits demanding millions in damages for the disrupted live broadcast. Humiliated and trembling, Lily thought her career was over until James Sharp in a black suit stormed the stage. He draped his jacket over her, shielding her from prying eyes, and carried her off, his voice cutting through the chaos. "She's with me. Deal with me if you want compensation." His influence silenced the threats, and Lily's gratitude bloomed into something more profound. But when James opened his eyes on a rainy September morning in 2025, the warmth Lily had imagined was nowhere to be found. His gaze, once kind, was now a blade of ice. "You stole my happiness, Lily," he rasped, his voice raw from disuse. "In my dreams, I was with Emma, not you. You should have let me die." The words sliced through her, each a betrayal of the years she'd given him. She stood frozen by his bedside, her hands trembling as she clutched the journal she'd filled with hopes for their future. In that moment, she saw not the man who'd saved her, but a stranger consumed by hatred. Lily's mind reeled, memories of her past life flooding back. She hadn't always walked away. In that other life, James's rage had turned lethal. He'd ordered his security team to drag her to a remote forest outside Seattle, where they dug a pit under his cold supervision. You ruined everything he'd said, standing at the edge as dirt rained down on her. Lily's screams had echoed through the trees, her nails clawing at the earth, but James watched unmoved as she was buried alive. The memory choked her, a vivid nightmare she couldn't unsee. Yet here she was alive again, standing in the same hospital room the same day, replaying like a cruel loop. How had she returned, Lily didn't know for sure, but in her darkest moments during those 5 years, she'd prayed to a higher power, begging for a chance to right her wrongs. Perhaps those prayers, whispered in desperation, had woven this miracle, a rebirth granted by some cosmic mercy to rewrite her fate. She wasn't the same woman who'd begged for James's love. This time she would choose herself. As nurses bustled around James, checking monitors, Lily stepped back, her heart pounding with a new resolve. She wouldn't repeat the past. She wouldn't let James's venom consume her again. "I'm done," she whispered, more to herself than to him. His eyes narrowed, but she turned away, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she walked toward the exit, each step a declaration of freedom. Outside, the Seattle rain misted her face, washing away the weight of 5 years. She paused, glancing at her phone, where a notification from her favorite YouTube channel, Redemption Tales, popped up. The channel, known for stories of heartbreak and triumph, had been her solace during lonely nights. Smiling faintly, she thought of the community there, sharing their stories of resilience in the comments. She mused that if stories like mine move, you join the Redemption Tales family. Like, comment, share your journey, and hit that subscribe button. We're all together. The thought grounded her, reminding her she wasn't alone in her pain or rebirth. As she reached the hospital parking lot, a voice called out, "Miss Carter." She turned to see Dr. Ethan Brooks, the neurologist hired by the Mitchell family to oversee James's recovery. Tall and lean, with wire-rimmed glasses and a calm demeanor, Ethan exuded a quiet strength that contrasted with James's volatility. He said, "I'm heading to the Mitchell estate," adjusting his coat against the drizzle. "Need a ride?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. She felt the first stirrings of hope as they drove through Seattle's slick streets. This was her second chance, and she wouldn't waste it on a man who'd buried her literally and figuratively in his pursuit of another. Lily Carter sat on a weathered bench in the bustling Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, the hum of travelers and overhead announcements filling the air. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, James Mitchell's name flashing across the screen like a warning. "I'm awake, Lily. Get here in 3 minutes or you're dead." Read the first text followed by another. "Where's Emma? I need her now." Each word was a dagger slicing through the fragile hope she'd clung to for 5 years. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of memory. She'd been here before in another life, rushing to James's side only to face his wrath. That life had ended in a pit of earth, her screams swallowed by darkness. Now reborn on the same September day in 2025, Lily felt the universe's gift pulsing within her, a chance to rewrite her story. The rebirth wasn't just a second chance. It was a divine intervention, an answer to the prayers she'd whispered in the hospital's quiet hours. During those 5 years, she'd knelt by James's bedside, pleading with whatever force listened to give her strength to let her undo the pain of loving someone who didn't love her back. Standing in the airport's chaos, she sensed that force had heard her, granting her this moment to choose differently. Her heart, once tethered to James, now beat for herself. She silenced her phone, ignoring his demands, and stood her resolve as steady as the cascades on the horizon. Lily's mind drifted to the past, to why she'd given so much to James. In 2018, she was a rising model, her face gracing Seattle billboards. Disaster struck during a live broadcast fashion show. Her heel snagged, her ankle snapped, sending her crashing to the runway. The crowd's gasps and the organizers' threats to sue for millions crushed her spirit. But James, then a tech prodigy, intervened, shielding her from ruin. He paid off the organizers, gave her a home in his Lake Washington villa, and offered her a life of luxury as his companion. Gratitude turned to love. But when James met Emma Wilson, a radiant 21-year-old at Lily's modeling studio, he discarded her without a second thought. Lily had initiated their breakup, but when James fell into a coma after a fight with Emma over a failed diamond auction, Lily returned, driven by duty and a lingering hope. As she walked through the airport, Lily's phone buzzed again. Another message from James. "Don't play games, Lily. I know you're nothing without me." She stared at the screen, her heart icing over. In her past life, she'd run to him only to be met with a vase smashed against her skull. This time she deleted the message and stepped toward the exit, the Seattle skyline looming through the glass. She wouldn't chase a man who saw her as a shadow of Emma. A voice broke her thoughts. "Miss Carter," Dr. Ethan Brooks stood before her, his coat damp from outside drizzle. The neurologist hired by the Mitchell family at great expense had a lean frame and a reserved smile that hinted at unspoken depths. He said, "I'm heading to the Mitchell estate to check on James. Can I offer you a lift?" Lily hesitated, then nodded, sensing a quiet ally in Ethan's steady gaze. Ethan shared a piece of himself as they drove through Seattle's rain-slicked streets. "I lost my sister to a brain injury years ago," he said, his voice soft. "It's why I became a neurologist. I don't open up easily, but I see how much you've carried. You don't deserve his anger." Lily's chest tightened, not from pain, but from the unexpected warmth of being seen. They pulled up to the Mitchell estate in Bellevue, a sprawling mansion of glass and stone. James's voice crackled through the car's Bluetooth on a video call, his face twisting when he saw Ethan beside her. "Who's that Lily moving on already?" His tone was venomous, accusing her of betrayal. Lily lowered the volume, her hands steady. Ethan spoke calmly into the phone. "Mr. Mitchell, your brain's still fragile. Emotional outbursts could trigger another collapse, paralysis, or worse." James's face paled, and he ended the call abruptly. At the estate, Margaret Mitchell, James's mother, greeted them, her eyes red from tears of relief at her son's awakening. James, propped up in a hospital bed in the grand living room, fixed Lily with a cold stare. "Why are you here?" he snapped. "I want Emma." In her past life, Lily had rushed to him only to be met with violence. Now she stood at the room's edge, her voice calm. "I'm here to say goodbye, Margaret. My work is done." Margaret's face fell, but Lily's heart was light. She turned, leaving James's stunned gaze behind her, footsteps echoing on the marble floor. This was her rebirth, her chance to walk away from a love that had only ever buried her. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle shimmered under the sodium glow of streetlights. As Lily Carter sat in the passenger seat of Dr. Ethan Brooks's car, the engine's hum, a quiet counterpoint to her racing thoughts. The drive to the Mitchell family's estate in Bellevue felt like crossing a threshold into a past she'd vowed to leave behind. Ethan, the neurologist, hired to oversee James Mitchell's recovery, drove with steady precision, his wire-rimmed glasses catching the faint light. Lily glanced at him, grateful for his offer of a ride from the airport. His calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos of James's messages still burning in her mind. Get here now, Lily, or you're dead. She silenced her phone, her resolve hardening. This was her rebirth, a divine second chance granted by the prayers she'd whispered over 5 years of tending to James's comatose body. She wouldn't waste it on a man who'd buried her in her past life. As they pulled into the Mitchell estate's circular driveway, the mansion loomed like a glass and stone fortress, its windows reflecting the stormy Puget Sound sky. Lily's heart thudded not from fear but from the weight of memory. In her previous life, she'd rushed to James's side the moment he woke, only to be met with a vase smashed against her skull, his voice roaring, "You ruined my happiness!" The gash had bled her vision, blurring as he blamed her for pulling him from a dream world with Emma Wilson, the woman he loved. Now reborn on this September day in 2025, Lily knew better. She wouldn't beg for his love again. Ethan broke the silence, his voice soft but probing. "You don't have to go in, you know. You've given enough." Lily met his gaze, seeing a flicker of understanding in his hazel eyes. He'd shared a glimpse of his own pain earlier, losing his sister to a brain injury had driven him to neurology. Still, it also left him guarded, his warmth buried under a professional veneer. "I need to close this chapter," Lily said, her voice steady, "not for him, but for me." With quiet respect in his expression, Ethan nodded and opened the car door. Inside the estate's grand living room, transformed into a medical suite, James lay propped up in a hospital bed, monitors beeping softly. His mother, Margaret Mitchell, stood nearby, her face etched with relief and exhaustion. James's eyes, once bright with charm, now glinted with ice as they fixed on Lily. "Why are you here?" He snapped, his voice hoarse but sharp. "I want Emma." The words stung, but Lily stood at the room's edge, her hands clasped to keep them from trembling. She remembered the pit, the dirt choking her lungs, his cold silhouette above. This time she wouldn't crumble. Before she could speak, James's phone, which had been connected to the car's Bluetooth from earlier, replayed in her mind. During the drive, he'd called, his face twisting with jealousy on the video feed when he saw Ethan beside her. "Who's that guy, Lily? Moving on already?" He'd accused, his voice dripping with venom. Ethan had intervened and his tone was clinical. "Mr. Mitchell, your brain is fragile. Emotional outbursts could trigger paralysis or another coma." James had paled, ending the call abruptly. Now his gaze darted in the room between Lily and Ethan, suspicion darkening his features. "What's he doing here?" he demanded, pointing at Ethan. "Margaret said Dr. Brooks is here to ensure your recovery," her voice pleading. She turned to Lily, her eyes soft with gratitude. "Lily, you've been an angel these past 5 years. Please stay a little longer." Lily had yielded to those pleas in her past life, clinging to hope. Now she felt a shift within, a clarity born from her rebirth. She wasn't here to save James or win his love. She was here to let go. "Margaret," Lily said, her voice calm but firm. "My task is done. I'm leaving." The words hung in the air, a quiet declaration of her freedom. Margaret's face fell, but James's expression twisted into a sneer. "Leaving? You think you can walk away after everything?" His voice rose, echoing the hysteria of her past life. But Lily didn't flinch. She saw him clearly now, a man consumed by his obsession with Emma, blind to the woman who'd given him her youth. Ethan stepped forward, his presence steady. "Mr. Mitchell, I recommend rest. Stress could jeopardize your recovery." James's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his eyes burning with rage. Lily turned her sneakers silent on the marble floor and walked toward the exit. Each step felt like shedding a weight, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She wasn't the naive model who'd fallen for James's heroism, nor the caregiver who'd prayed for his love. She was Lily Carter, reborn, and this was her first act of defiance. Outside, the Seattle rain misted her face, a cleansing baptism. She glanced back at the mansion, its lights blurring in the drizzle, and felt a quiet peace. This was her story now, and she would write its ending. Lily Carter stood outside the Mitchell estate, the Seattle rain soaking her coat as she stared at the mansion's glowing windows. The decision to walk away from James Mitchell felt like cutting a tether, but the weight of their shared past lingered. Her rebirth, this second chance granted by the desperate prayers she'd whispered over 5 years, had given her clarity, but it couldn't erase the memories of why she'd given so much to a man who'd betrayed her. As she waited for a cab, her mind drifted back to 2018, when James had been her savior, binding her to him with a debt she'd spent years repaying. It was a crisp autumn evening at Seattle's Paramount Theater, the air buzzing with anticipation for a high-profile fashion show. Lily, then 24, was a rising model, her face on billboards across the city. She strode down the runway, her heels clicking when disaster struck. Her stiletto caught in a crack, sending her crashing to the floor. Her ankle twisted at a sickening angle, pain shooting through her like fire. The crowd gasped, cameras flashing as the organizers' voices crackled through her earpiece. "Get up, Lily! This is live worldwide!" Trembling, she tried to stand, but her ankle buckled and humiliation swallowed her whole. They threatened lawsuits demanding millions for the disrupted broadcast, which would bankrupt her. Then James Mitchell appeared, a sharp figure in a black suit, his presence commanding the chaos. He knelt beside her, draping his jacket over her trembling frame, and lifted her into his arms. "She's with me," he told the organizers, his voice cold and final. "Take it up with me if you want compensation." His influence as a tech mogul silenced their threats, and the incident vanished from the headlines. Dazed and grateful, Lily saw him as a knight, his sharp features softened by a rare smile. He took her to his Lake Washington villa, offering her a life of luxury as his companion. "Stay with me," he said, his tone both promising and commanding. "You'll never want for anything." Gratitude turned to love as Lily adapted to her new role. She studied with private tutors, learning to cook James's favorite cedar plank salmon and warmly dress his home. She hid her schnauzer, Rusty, at a friend's house, knowing James's severe dog allergies. Her ankle, shattered in the fall, ended her modeling career, but James arranged reconstructive surgery, restoring its appearance, if not its strength. He even funded a small modeling studio for her, which deepened her devotion. But love blinded her to his flaws, his temper, his need for control, his wandering eye. In 2020, everything changed. At Lily's studio, James met Emma Wilson, a 21-year-old model with a radiant smile and youthful confidence. He was captivated, showering her with gifts, diamonds, designer bags that dwarfed what he'd given Lily. Her heart broke, but she saw the truth. She was a kept woman, not his equal. She initiated their breakup, expecting him to fight for her. Instead, he turned away, his silence colder than any words. Less than a week later, Emma's demands led to disaster. She insisted James bid on a $10 million diamond for her birthday, and when he lost, their argument escalated. In a rage, James suffered a heart attack, collapsing into a coma. Margaret Mitchell, desperate, begged Lily to care for him. "You're the only one he trusted," she said, tears in her eyes. Lily agreed out of gratitude for James's past kindness and a lingering hope that he'd see her love. She tended to him for 5 years, knitting scarves he'd never wear, whispering memories of their time together, and caring for Rusty in secret. She poured her soul into his recovery, believing it would bind them closer. But when he woke, his hatred shattered her, and in her past life, it led to her death. Now, standing outside the estate, Lily felt the weight of those years lift. Her rebirth wasn't just a chance to escape James's betrayal, but a call to reclaim herself. She'd given him her youth, her dreams, her love, all to repay a debt that had long been settled. The cab pulled up, its headlights cutting through the rain. As she opened the door, she heard footsteps. "Lily, wait," Margaret called, her face pale. "Please, he's not stable. No one cares for him like you." Lily's heart ached for the older woman, but she shook her head. "Ask James what he wants, Margaret. I've given enough." She slid into the cab, the door closing on her past. As the car pulled away, the Seattle skyline faded into the mist, and Lily felt a spark of something new, freedom fragile, but hers. The Seattle rain pattered against the cab's windows as Lily Carter rode away from the Mitchell estate, the mansion's lights fading into the misty September evening of 2025. Though heavy with the past, her heart felt lighter each mile, as if the city's damp air washed away the 5 years she'd spent tethered to James Mitchell. Her rebirth, this inexplicable second chance granted by the fervent prayers she'd whispered during countless sleepless nights, had given her the strength to walk away. But as the cab wove through Capitol Hill's quiet streets, memories of those years flooded back, pulling her into the story of why she'd given so much to a man who'd repaid her with betrayal. It began in 2020 when James, the charismatic tech mogul who'd once saved her, fell into a coma. Lily had been his companion for 2 years, living in his Lake Washington villa, her life shaped by gratitude for his intervention during her darkest moment. In 2018, at a Seattle fashion show, her heel caught in a runway crack, shattering her ankle and her modeling career. James, then a rising star in Silicon Valley, had swept in, shielding her from ruin and offering her a life of luxury. She'd learned to cook his favorite dishes, hidden her schnauzer Rusty due to his allergies, and poured her heart into pleasing him. Her gratitude had deepened into love, but James's attention shifted when he met Emma Wilson, a radiant 21-year-old, at Lily's modeling studio. Emma's arrival changed everything. James showered her with gifts, diamonds, designer bags, while Lily faded into the background. Heartbroken, Lily initiated their breakup, hoping he'd fight for her. Instead, he walked away, his silence colder than any rejection. A week later, disaster struck. Emma, demanding a $10 million diamond for her birthday, pushed James into a heated argument when he lost the auction. In a rage, he suffered a heart attack, collapsing into a vegetative state. Margaret Mitchell, his mother, found Lily at her studio, her eyes red with desperation. "Please, Lily," she begged. "You're the only one he trusted. Help him wake up." Lily agreed, not just out of gratitude for James's past kindness, but from a lingering hope that her care would rekindle his love. For 5 years, she became his caregiver, tending to him in a Seattle hospital room. She bathed him, read him poetry, and knitted scarves he'd never wear, each stitch a silent plea for his return. She whispered memories of their time together, hoping he'd hear her in his quiet world. Rusty, her schnauzer, stayed with a friend, as James's allergies made it impossible to keep him near. Lily's life narrowed to the rhythm of monitors and the faint hope of his awakening. She journaled her thoughts, pouring her love into pages she hoped he'd one day read. But when James woke in her past life, his first words were venomous. "You stole my happiness, Lily. I was with Emma in my dreams." His hatred led to her death, buried alive under his orders in a forest outside Seattle. Now reborn, Lily saw those years differently. They weren't just a sacrifice, they were a debt she'd paid in full. Her prayers for a second chance, whispered in the hospital's quiet hours, had been answered by a force she couldn't name, granting her this moment to choose herself. In the present, the cab pulled up to her modest Capitol Hill apartment. Lily stepped out her suitcase, heavy with the few belongings she'd taken from the Mitchell estate. Margaret's voice echoed, "He's not stable, Lily. No one cares for him like you." In her past life, she'd stayed hoping to win James's love. Now she shook her head, her resolve unwavering. "Ask James what he wants," she'd told Margaret, her voice calm but final. She wasn't the naive woman who'd clung to hope. She was reborn, and this time she'd walk away. As she unlocked her apartment door, her phone buzzed with another message from James. "You can't just leave Lily. You owe me." She deleted it, her heart steady. The rain outside softened to a drizzle, and she felt a quiet shift within, a spark of freedom, fragile but growing. She'd given James her youth, but now she'd reclaim her life. Closing the door, she stepped into her apartment, the first space truly hers, and began to unpack each item, a step toward a new beginning. Lily Carter stood in the underground parking garage of the Mitchell estate, the cold September air of Seattle biting at her fingertips. Her old electric car, a beat-up compact, parked absurdly beside a row of James Mitchell's sleek Lamborghinis, refused to start, its battery drained from disuse. The irony wasn't lost on her, her modest life next to his opulence, a reminder of the chasm between them. She'd just walked away from James, her rebirth giving her the strength to reject his toxic pull. The prayers she'd whispered over 5 years of caregiving, pleas for a chance to escape her pain, had been answered, granting her this second life to rewrite her fate. But as she stared at her dead car, frustration crept in. How was she supposed to move forward when even her escape was stalled? Footsteps echoed behind her, sharp against the concrete. Miss Carter, Dr. Ethan Brooks emerged from the shadows, his coat slightly damp from the Seattle drizzle. The neurologist hired to oversee James's recovery adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, his calm demeanor starkly contrasting to the chaos Lily had left behind. "Car trouble?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of warmth beneath its professionalism. Lily sighed, nodding. "It's out of power. Story of my life right now." Ethan's lips quirked in a faint smile. "I'm heading back to the city. I can give you a ride." Grateful, Lily accepted, sliding into his understated sedan. As they drove through Bellevue's quiet streets, the city lights blurred in the rain, and Ethan broke the silence. "I don't usually get personal, but I admire your strength. Walking away from someone like James Mitchell isn't easy." His words caught her off guard, and she glanced at him, seeing a flicker of vulnerability in his hazel eyes. "My sister," he continued, his voice softening, "died from a brain injury when I was in med school. It's why I became a neurologist. I've seen families cling to hope, but I've also seen caregivers like you give everything only to be hurt. You don't deserve that." Lily's chest tightened, not from pain, but from being seen in a way James never had. Ethan's guarded nature, shaped by loss, mirrored her own, yet his quiet empathy felt like a lifeline. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying to figure out who I am without him." Ethan nodded, his focus on the road. "You're already doing that. Most people would have stayed chasing what they lost. You didn't." Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. James's name flashed across the screen, his message sharp. "You're playing games, Lily. Come back now." She ignored it, but another followed, and then a video call. Against her better judgment, she answered, keeping the volume low. James's face appeared, his eyes blazing. "Where are you? And who's that guy?" His jealousy flared when he glimpsed Ethan in the driver's seat, already replacing me. "Huh? You're pathetic." Lily's hands clenched, but Ethan spoke calmly into the phone. "Mr. Mitchell, your brain's still recovering. Anger like this could cause a relapse paralysis, or worse." James's face paled, and he ended the call abruptly. Lily exhaled, her tension easing. "He doesn't get it," she said, more to herself than Ethan. "He thinks I'm still his." Ethan glanced at her, his expression serious. "You're not anyone's Lily. You're free to choose your path. Don't let his shadow pull you back." His words settled over her like a warm blanket, stirring a spark of confidence. For 5 years, she'd cared for James, knitting scarves, hiding Rusty, and pouring her love into a man who saw only Emma Wilson in his dreams. Those dreams she now suspected were tied to her, a mystery her rebirth urged her to unravel, but one she wasn't ready to face. As they reached her Capitol Hill apartment, Ethan parked and turned to her. "I know it's not my place, but I've seen patients like James. His obsession with Emma, his anger, it's not about you. It's about what he can't control. You don't owe him anything." Lily met his gaze, seeing a doctor and a man who understood loss and resilience. "I'm starting to believe that," she said, a faint smile breaking through. She stepped out, the rain cool on her face, and waved as Ethan drove off. She lit a candle inside her apartment, its glow soft against the darkness. Her rebirth wasn't just about leaving James and discovering who she could become. For the first time, she felt that possibility, fragile but real, taking root in her heart. The Seattle rain had softened to a mist as Lily Carter stood outside the Mitchell estate's iron gates, her breath visible in the chilly September air 2025. Her decision to walk away from James Mitchell, the man she'd cared for through 5 years of his coma, felt like a rebirth, a second chance granted by the desperate prayers she'd whispered in the hospital's lonely hours. Those prayers, born of her longing to escape a love that had only brought pain, had woven a miracle, returning her to the day James woke. Her heart thrummed with relief and uncertainty as she waited for a bus to take her back to Capitol Hill. She'd left James behind, but the past still clung to her like damp clothes, heavy with memories of betrayal. As she adjusted her scarf, a sleek black car pulled up, and Emma Wilson stepped out, her designer coat pristine despite the drizzle. Emma, the radiant 21-year-old who'd stolen James's heart, fixed Lily with a triumphant smile. "So Lily James woke up, and the first person he asked for was me," she said, her voice dripping with smugness. "5 years of you playing nurse, you're still nothing to him. Pathetic." Her words were a blade, but Lily's rebirth had armored her. Emma's taunts had crushed her in her past life, driving her to beg for James's approval. Now she met Emma's gaze with a faint, unshaken smile. "You're right, Emma. I'm done here. You can have him." Emma's smirk faltered, caught off guard by Lily's calm. Before she could respond, a loud clang echoed through the mist. James, leaning heavily on a cane, had dropped it, his face pale with shock at Lily's words. He limped toward them, his eyes stormy with confusion and anger. "Lily, what's this about leaving?" he demanded, his voice unsteady. Lily would have softened in her past life, hoping to win him back. Now she saw only a man blinded by his obsession with Emma, unable to see the woman who'd given him everything. Before Lily could speak, Dr. Ethan Brooks emerged from the estate, his coat slung over one arm. The neurologist whose steady presence had anchored Lily since their meeting at the airport had just finished James's examination. He adjusted his glasses, his expression calm but piercing. "Miss Carter, everything all right?" he asked, his voice a quiet lifeline. Lily nodded, grateful for his presence. Ethan turned to James, his tone clinical. "Mr. Mitchell, your recovery is fragile. Emotional outbursts could cause a relapse. I suggest you rest." James's jaw tightened, but Ethan's words held him in check. As Lily turned to leave, Ethan caught her arm gently. "Before you go," he said, lowering his voice, "there's something you should know." During James's coma, he had vivid dreams running a studio knitting scarves and a dog named Rusty. He thought it was Emma, but those details, they're your life, not hers. Lily's breath caught her heart pounding. Rusty was her schnauzer, hidden from James due to his allergies. The scarves, the studio, they were hers too. His subconscious lingered near you. Ethan continued, his eyes searching hers. It's rare, but in deep comas, some patients form connections to those closest to them. I've seen it in my research. He saw your world, Lily, but mistook it for Emma's. The revelation shook her. She'd poured her soul into James for 5 years, believing he was lost to her. Now to learn his dreams had traced her life. Her dog, her quiet knitting moments felt like a cruel twist. Had his soul been tethered to her even as he woke hating her? The thought was too heavy, too tangled with pain. It doesn't change anything, she said, her voice firm. He chose Emma. I'm choosing me. Ethan nodded, a flicker of respect in his gaze. You're stronger than most, Lily. Emma, watching from a distance, scoffed. You're giving up so easily, I always knew you were weak. Lily ignored her, focusing on the bus approaching through the mist. James limped closer, his voice rising. Lily, don't do this, you can't just walk away. But she did, stepping onto the bus without looking back. As it pulled away, she saw James's silhouette frozen in the rain and Emma's triumphant grin fading into uncertainty. Lily felt the weight of her past lift for the first time, replaced by a fragile hope. Her rebirth wasn't just about leaving, it was about reclaiming the woman she'd lost to James's shadow. Lily Carter's modeling studio in Seattle's Capitol Hill buzzed with energy, its walls lined with mirrors and sketches of runway designs. 3 months had passed since she'd walked away from James Mitchell, her rebirth a divine second chance granted by years of whispered prayers, fueling her determination to rebuild. The studio, born from James's funding but now her own, was her sanctuary, where she taught aspiring models to walk confidently. She was still rediscovering herself. Her emotional journey had been quiet but profound. Late nights journaling helped her untangle the gratitude that had once bound her to James from the love she'd mistaken it for. She was learning to see herself not as his caregiver or companion, but as Lily Carter, a woman with dreams of her own. But peace was fleeting. Emma Wilson sauntered into the studio one morning, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood. She announced, I'm here for class, waving a receipt for 2 years prepaid tuition. Lily's stomach sank. Emma had enrolled years ago to hover near James, and now she was back, her smile sharp with intent. Emma said, you can't kick me out. Her voice is sugary, but laced with venom. I paid good money. Lily wanted to refuse, but the studio was still fragile, its reputation vulnerable. Gritting her teeth, she let Emma stay, sensing trouble brewing. On the 3rd day, chaos erupted. Posters plastered the studio's windows. Emma Wilson homewrecker, Lily Carter's betrayal. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as they shouted questions. Miss Carter, did Emma ruin your relationship with James Mitchell? Is this a love triangle? Emma stood in the corner, sobbing theatrically, her makeup artfully streaked. Lily, I never wronged you. Why are you doing this? She cried, her voice carrying to the microphones. Lily's heart raced, but her rebirth had taught her to see through manipulation. She clapped slowly, her voice cutting through the noise. Nice performance, Emma. A real Oscar contender. The reporters turned hungry for a response, but Lily's calm unnerved them. She ordered security to clear the studio, her hands steady despite the pounding in her chest. As the crowd dispersed, Emma's sobs grew louder, and she bolted to the rooftop, climbing over the railing in a dramatic flourish. If I can't have peace, I'll end it, she screamed, her words broadcast live on local news. Lily's frustration flared. Emma's game was a calculated move to paint her as the villain. James burst through the studio doors, his cane clattering as he limped toward Lily, his face twisted with rage. What did you do to her? He shouted. If she jumps, I'll never forgive you. Lily's patience snapped. She'd cowered under James's accusations in her past life, desperate for his approval. Now she stepped forward, her voice icy. She's playing you, James. Can't you see it? This is her show, not mine. She raised her hand, and for a moment she considered slapping him, but instead she pointed to the rooftop. Save your princess. I'm done. James froze, his eyes flickering with doubt, but he turned and limped toward the stairs, calling Emma's name. Security reached her first, pulling her back from the ledge. Her sobs were now a performance for the cameras. As the chaos settled, Lily stood alone in the studio, her reflection staring back from the mirrors. She'd spent years defining herself through James, his savior, caregiver, lover. Now she saw a woman who'd survived betrayal and death reborn to fight for her own life. But the victory was bittersweet. That evening, a notice arrived from the property manager the landlord was reclaiming the studio space. Lily's heart sank. She knew James's influence was behind it, a petty attempt to corner her for Emma's sake. She thought of Ethan Brooks, the neurologist who'd become an unexpected ally. His words from their last meeting echoed, "You're not anyone's Lily. You're free." She clung to that truth, refusing to let James's sabotage break her. Packing her desk, Lily found a scarf she'd knitted during James's coma, its stitches tight with hope he'd never deserved. She tucked it away, a reminder of the woman she'd been and the one she was becoming. Her rebirth wasn't just about leaving James. It was about building something new, even if it meant starting from nothing. As she locked the studio door, the Seattle skyline glowed under a clearing sky, and Lily felt a spark of defiance. Emma's manipulation and James's cruelty couldn't stop her. She'd find a way forward, one step at a time. The Seattle skyline glimmered through the mist as Lily Carter stood outside her shuttered modeling studio in Capitol Hill, the eviction notice still taped to the door. It was October 2025, a month since Emma Wilson's theatrical rooftop stunt had painted Lily as a villain, and James Mitchell's influence had forced the landlord to reclaim the space. Her rebirth, a second chance granted by the desperate prayers she'd whispered during 5 years of caring for James's comatose body, had given her the strength to walk away from him, but the cost was steep. Every rental inquiry she made was met with rejection, James's shadow looming behind each closed door. Yet Lily refused to break. Her emotional journey, charted in late-night journal entries, had clarified one truth. Her devotion to James had been gratitude, not love, and she was done living for anyone but herself. As she packed the last of her studio's equipment, her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Ethan Brooks, the neurologist who'd become an unexpected ally. "Coffee at Pike Place. I have a proposition." Intrigued, Lily met him at a bustling cafe overlooking the Puget Sound, the air rich with the scent of roasted beans and sea salt. Ethan dressed casually in a sweater that softened his usual clinical demeanor, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, and smiled a rare, genuine warmth that hinted at the man beneath the professional mask. "I need an etiquette coach," he said, stirring his latte. "I'm speaking at international medical conferences representing American neurology. One wrong move and I'm a walking stereotype. You've got poise, Lily, and a knack for teaching." Interested, Lily hesitated, her pride warring with necessity. Her studio was gone, her savings dwindling. But Ethan's offer felt different, not charity, but a partnership. "Why me?" she asked, searching his hazel eyes. He leaned forward, his voice low. "After my sister died, I buried myself in work keeping people at arm's length. But watching you walk away from James, choosing yourself despite everything, I respect that. You're rebuilding, and I think we could help each other." His vulnerability, shared in quiet moments during their drives, deepened her trust. She nodded. "All right, Ethan, I'm in." Their lessons began in a rented studio near the University of Washington, where Lily taught Ethan the nuances of formal dining, diplomatic greetings, and confident posture. His quick wit and dry humor surfaced, easing the formality. "I feel like I'm in a Jane Austen novel," he quipped, practicing a handshake. Lily laughed, a sound she hadn't heard in herself for years. Between sessions, she reflected on her past with James, how she'd molded herself to his desires, hiding her schnauzer Rusty and knitting scarves he'd thrown away. Her rebirth had shown her she'd been repaying a debt, not building a life. Now teaching Ethan, she felt her confidence return, each lesson a step toward reclaiming her identity. Word spread of Lily's expertise, and clients, business executives, academics sought her out. She launched an online brand, Poise, by Lily, sharing videos on etiquette and resilience, her story resonating with thousands. The work filled her days, but late at night she thought of James's dreams revealed by Ethan. During his coma, James saw a woman knitting, running a studio, and caring for a dog named Rusty. Lily's life, not Emma's. Ethan believed James's subconscious had latched onto her presence, a phenomenon he'd studied in coma patients. The thought stirred a pang of what might have been, but Lily pushed it away. Her rebirth was about moving forward, not dwelling on a man who'd chosen Emma. Meanwhile, Ethan shared updates on James's declining health. "He's in a wheelchair now," he said one evening, his voice heavy. "Emma married him, but she's pushing for a child, ignoring his fragile condition. He's refusing rehabilitation, chasing physical intimacy to please her. It's damaging his brain and nervous system." Lily felt a flicker of pity, but her heart stayed steady. James had made his choices just as she was making hers. As she edited a new video for her brand, the Seattle skyline glowing outside her window, Lily felt a surge of purpose. Her studio might be gone, but she was building something new, hers alone. Lily Carter's new life in Seattle was taking shape, her online brand Poise, by Lily gaining traction with thousands of followers. It was November 2025, and her days were filled with coaching clients, filming videos, and rediscovering the woman she'd lost during 5 years of caring for James Mitchell. Her rebirth, a divine gift born from prayers whispered in the hospital's quiet hours, had freed her from his shadow. But the past wasn't done with her. Emma Wilson's manipulation had cost Lily her studio, and James's influence had blocked every attempt to find a new space. Yet Lily's emotional journey, mapped in her journal, had taught her resilience. She wasn't the naive model who'd fallen for James's heroism, or the caregiver who'd hoped for his love. She was rebuilding, and no one could take that away. One evening, as Lily reviewed client schedules in her Capitol Hill apartment, her phone buzzed with a news alert. A local blog had exposed Emma's rooftop stunt as a fabrication, complete with leaked emails showing she'd paid for the homewrecker posters to smear Lily. Social media erupted, hashtags like #EmmaExposed trending, as thousands called her out for her lies. Lily scrolled through Emma's ex profile, where defiant posts from Paris clubs painted her as unrepentant. She fled to Europe, Ethan Brooks confirmed over coffee the next day, his voice calm but edged with disdain. After James's health worsened, she left him, claiming she needed space to heal. She's done. Lily felt a quiet satisfaction, not from revenge but from closure. Emma's downfall was her own doing, resulting from her greed and manipulation. Lily had faced her at her worst, taunting her outside the Mitchell estate, orchestrating the studio scandal, and now Emma's absence cleared the air. But James's condition weighed on Lily's mind. Ethan, ever the steady presence, shared more during their next etiquette session. "James is paralyzed," he said, adjusting his glasses. "His refusal to follow rehab, combined with Emma's pressure for a child, has taken a toll. His cerebellar balance is shot, and his emotional instability isn't helping. He could deteriorate further." Lily nodded, her heart stirring with pity, but no regret. Her journal entries had helped her untangle her past devotion to James' gratitude for his 2018 rescue, not love. Her rebirth had shown her the difference, and she was done carrying his burdens. She thought of his coma dreams, which Ethan had revealed James saw a woman knitting, running a studio, caring for a dog named Rusty. Lily's life, mistaken for Emma's. Ethan's research suggested James's subconscious had clung to her presence, a lifeline during his coma. The revelation no longer shook her. It was a ghost of a connection she'd left behind. As Lily's brand grew, Ethan became more than a client. Their sessions, now held in a cozy studio near Pike Place Market, were filled with laughter and shared stories. Ethan opened up about his sister's death, how it had driven him to neurology but left him wary of connection. "You're changing that," he admitted one evening, his smile soft. "You remind me there's life beyond work." Lily felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, her heart opening to the possibility of trust. Once a place of solitude, her apartment now held traces of her new life client, thank you notes, a half-knitted scarf, Rusty's toys scattered across the floor. One night, Lily rechecked Emma's ex profile, curious about her fate. Posts showed her partying in Paris, but comments were brutal, calling out her lies. A final post hinted at a new scandal her European sponsors had dropped Emma. Lily closed the app, her heart steady. Emma's chaos no longer touched her. She thought of James, now alone, his choices leading to his downfall. Her rebirth had been about more than escaping him, building a life where she defined her worth. As she walked Rusty along the waterfront, the Seattle skyline aglow under a starry sky, Lily felt a surge of hope. She was free, and her future was hers to shape. The Seattle winter had settled in by December 2025, draping the city in a chill that mirrored the quiet resolve in Lily Carter's heart. Her new life was thriving, built on the ashes of a past she'd left behind. Her online brand Poise by Lily had grown into a beacon for those seeking confidence and grace, and her coaching sessions with Dr. Ethan Brooks had blossomed into a partnership of mutual respect and subtle warmth. Her rebirth, a divine second chance granted by the desperate prayers she'd whispered during 5 years of caring for James Mitchell's comatose body, had freed her from his shadow. Journaling had become her compass, helping her untangle the gratitude that had once bound her to James from the love she'd mistaken it for. She was no longer the caregiver who'd hoped for his heart. She was Lily Carter, a woman carving her own path. But the past wasn't done with her. One evening, as Lily walked her schnauzer Rusty along the Puget Sound waterfront, her phone rang. It was Margaret Mitchell, James's mother, her voice trembling. "Lily, please," she said. "James is paralyzed. He's wasting away and he keeps calling your name. Can you see him just once? Not for him, for an older woman who's seen your kindness." Lily's heart stirred not with longing, but with a faint pity. Her rebirth had taught her to let go, but Margaret's plea tugged at the part of her that still remembered James's one act of kindness saving her from ruin in 2018. Against her better judgment, she agreed. The Mitchell estate in Bellevue loomed under a gray sky, its glass and stone facade as cold as the man inside. Lily pushed open the bedroom door, her breath catching at the sight of James. Once a commanding tech mogul, he now lay in a hospital bed, his face sunken, his eyes hollow. A shadow of regret replaced the vibrant man who'd swept her off a ruined runway. His gaze locked onto her, brimming with tears. "Lily," he whispered, his voice choked. "You came." She stood at the room's edge, her hands clasped, her heart steady. This was not the James who'd buried her alive in her past life, but he was still the man who'd chosen Emma Wilson over her. "Lily, it was you in my dreams," James said, his words tumbling out. "It was your life during the coma. Rusty, the scarves, the studio. I thought it was Emma, but it was always you." His voice broke and Lily's chest tightened. Ethan had explained this phenomenon. In deep comas, some patients' subconscious minds latch onto those closest to them, weaving vivid dreams from their presence. James had been tethered to her, her knitting, her dog, her quiet devotion, but woke believing it was Emma. "I was wrong," he continued, tears streaming. "I gave her everything and she left when I needed her most. You're the one who loved me, Lily. I'm so sorry." Lily's mind flashed to her past life, to the forest pit where James had watched her die, his face cold as the dirt rained down. She'd given him 5 years of her youth, tending to him out of gratitude for his rescue during her 2018 runway fall. But his apology now felt hollow, born not of love but of loneliness. "James," she said, her voice clear and cold, "you didn't wake up because you loved me. You woke up and chose Emma. Now she's gone and you're alone, so you're clinging to me. But I'm not your dream girl. I was just the one who stayed." James's face crumpled, his hands trembling as he reached for her but couldn't move. "We can start over," he pleaded. "There's still time." Lily shook her head, her heart calm. "You helped me once. James and I gave you 5 years in return. That debt is paid. We're done." His sobs echoed as she turned to leave, Margaret watching silently from the doorway. Lily paused, glancing back. "You didn't see me, James. Not then, not now. I hope you find peace, but it won't be with me." She walked out the door, closing softly, severing the last thread of their past. Outside, the Seattle rain fell gently, cleansing the weight of his regret. Lily's journal had helped her see the truth. Her love had been a projection, her devotion a repayment. Her rebirth was about more than escaping James. It was about embracing a life where she defined her worth. As she drove back to Capitol Hill, the city's lights blurred through the windshield and she felt a quiet strength. James's regret was his burden, not hers. She was free to write her own ending. Lily Carter's new studio in Seattle's Fremont district buzzed with life, its walls adorned with sketches and photos of confident models striding runways. It was January 2026, and her online brand Poise by Lily had exploded, drawing clients nationwide. Her rebirth, a miracle woven from prayers whispered during 5 years of caring for James Mitchell, had transformed her. She was no longer the caregiver who'd poured her youth into a man who'd betrayed her, nor the model who'd fallen on a runway in 2018, saved by James's fleeting heroism. Journaling had clarified her emotional journey, her devotion had been gratitude, not love, and her second chance was about building a truly hers life. Her partnership with Dr. Ethan Brooks had grown beyond professional boundaries. Their etiquette sessions, now held in a cozy Fremont loft, were filled with laughter and shared stories. Ethan's reserved demeanor had softened, his hazel eyes warm behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd opened up about his sister's death, how it had driven him to neurology, but left him wary of connection. "You're changing me, Lily," he'd said one evening, his smile tentative but real. "You make me want to live, not just work." Lily felt her heart stir, not with the desperate longing she'd once felt for James, but with a quiet trust she hadn't known she could feel. One crisp January evening, as Lily finished a class, her phone rang. Lily came to the window. Ethan's voice said warm through the line. She stepped to the studio's large windows overlooking Fremont's quirky streets and saw him below, dressed in a crisp white suit holding a bouquet of white roses. The gentle breeze ruffled his jacket and the streetlights cast a soft glow on his composed face. He looked up, his smile wide, and raised a hand to wave. "Lily," he said through the phone, "would you give me a chance?" Once heavy with betrayal, her heart felt light, unburdened by the past. Lily's mind flashed to her journey. She'd cared for James through his coma, knitting scarves he'd thrown away, hiding Rusty due to his allergies, believing her love would wake him. His dreams, Rusty her studio, her scarves had been of her life, not Emma's, a subconscious tether, Ethan's research had explained. But James's awakening had brought only hatred, and in her past life it had led to her death in a forest pit. Her rebirth had been a divine gift, an answer to her prayers for freedom. She'd walked away, rebuilt her career, and faced Emma's manipulations, emerging stronger each time. Now, standing at the window, she saw not the pain of her past, but the promise of her future. "Yes, Ethan," she said softly into the phone, her voice steady. "I'd like that." His smile widened, and he held the roses higher, a silent promise. Lily stepped away from the window, her heart full. She thought of James, now paralyzed and alone, his regret a consequence of his choices. Exposed for her lies, Emma had fled to Europe, her scandal-ridden life a fading echo. Lily's journal, filled with reflections on her growth, lay open on her desk, a testament to her resilience. She'd given James 5 years, but her rebirth had given her something greater herself. As she locked the studio and stepped into the Fremont night, the air was crisp, the stars bright above the city. Rusty trotted beside her, his leash loose in her hand. The noise of her past, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the pit faded into a distant hum. Ethan waited at the corner, the roses cradled in his arms, his presence a quiet anchor. For the first time, Lily felt peace, not pain. Her rebirth had led her here to a life she'd chosen, with a man who saw her for who she was. She smiled, her heart light, and took his hand, stepping forward into a future hers alone.